auxiliaries, but they're not called auxiliaries on here, but they are. These are called effects sends, which is they're auxiliaries actually, but they've just made it simple on this desk by calling them effect 1 and effect 2. And what they are is you've got effect 1, which is an external, so another send basically. So you've got another, you can send to an effects unit off, so that's a third send. We can use that for a third foldback as well if we want, if it's pre-faded. I'm not sure, I'll have to have a look. But that's another auxiliary, and the one below it goes to the internal effects unit. There's an effects unit here, which was found, and we'll try to see what it sounds like. You know, I don't know what it sounds like, so I'll have a listen today when we do the sound checks if it's any good and it's usable. So that sends a mix of which instrument you want to go to the effects unit or vocalist or whatever. That sends it outboard, and it'll be on effects send 1 somewhere there. This is here, effects send 1 and 2 because it's in stereo. Okay, you can probably pick up on 2 as well. So they both can go off outboard as well. So that's just there's 2 more auxiliaries. And then one we'll be using, if we use it at all, is one for the internal effects unit, which is 2. It actually says it on it. So effects 2 internal, effects 1 external. So
Can I just go back? So we have all these buttons pressed down for pre-fade?
yeah, they
That's
should always
what
we want pre-fade to fold back. Yeah. But now into your EQ section, which is just short for equalisation. Effectively, it's just a bit more sophisticated bass and treble control that you have at home. You've got various things, right? Once you've set this up, when you do your sound check, you shouldn't need to touch it. You might need to, but generally speaking, if you've got your sound check all set up right, these don't need touching. And you start with them flat, so everything's zeroed. And before every gig, I mean, it's people tend to set them and leave them and hope they're going to last forever. But it's not. It's different every time. The temperature of the room makes a difference to the sound. Everything does. So before every gig, you should start from 0 anyway and just do your sound check. And once people got to grips with the sound check, you'll do it in 10 to 15 minutes, and or even quicker once everybody's got used to doing it. And then you just set these up to suit as required. But start with them flat. In most cases, you won't need to touch them. You know, they're okay as they are. It's when you start messing with these, you start causing problems, because if you've got feedback problems, your mid-frequency, somebody turns that up, that's going to enhance the feedback problem. So if you're having a feedback problem, which you shouldn't have it set up properly, you can usually cure it by the EQ. And that's what you're doing in your sound check. But don't play with these things. Just leave them flat to start. If it sounds okay, leave it. You know, there's no point in messing about with something that's working. And the same with most of the controls. Once your desk's set up, you shouldn't really have to touch it much through the performance. And a lot of the problems we have, as I said earlier, is about people using the microphones wrong. We're trying to compensate for that. So sometimes you have to come and turn the gain up because they're over there. And that's then suddenly we'll get feedback because you've gone too far. So if you get the use of the microphone right, once it's set up, you shouldn't need to mess with this at all. You've got you just need to experiment with this when you've got time. There's no point in going through it. You've got high frequencies, you've got mid frequencies and low frequencies. And that speaks for itself. Without going to loads of theory, I mean, you just tweak it to what it sounds like.
Treble to bass, maybe.
Yeah, it is a bigger brand. And you've got this one, this one here alters the sweep of it. You actually pick the frequency you want to work on. And on the mids there, you'll see from 100 Hertz to 8 kilohertz. So it's quite a big sweep. So when you pick the frequency, then you can either boost it or cut it. So if you're having a feedback problem, you've probably got something around about 8 or 6 kilohertz that's causing a problem. You'll find it by sweeping the frequency, and then you just cut it. So, but you shouldn't, in this setup, you shouldn't really have that problem. But that's how you use it. And if you want to also enhance the guitar, say it's mid-frequencies, you'll pick the sounds nice and just boost it a bit. And the others just leave flat unless you need to use them. Then we've got the pan. Pan position, panoramic is what it's short for. And that's for stereo normally. So if when you're doing a mix, we're running a mono in here, so it doesn't matter at the moment. But if you want to do it in stereo, you could have the piano coming out that side and guitars coming out there, vocalists wherever. So you use your pan control for that. But it's also used for something else in this sort of setup. It's for routing, and I'll come to that just in a minute. But in a final mix situation, it's for stereo positioning. But it's also for routing, and I'll come to that when we come to the next bit. But then we've got a mute button, which I think is a real pain, to be honest. Because you press it down, you don't know which one, especially on this desk, it's not lit. bigger desks, they're lit. You know which one's muted. And that's why, as you were saying, you start talking, somebody's not looking, don't know what's going on, and there's a mic channel's off completely. There's no need to mute if it's all set up properly. You know, I'll drop bring the fader down. If you've got a problem, bring the fader down to about there. So if somebody does start talking, you miss them, at least they've got something, and just bring it up. And with sound,
So don't use the mute
I
button, is what you're saying.
don't use it.
I think what has been an issue was because the gains were